The Locked on Sun Devils podcast has a lot to talk to you guys about today on this Friday edition of the pod. We got to talk about some recent speculation about Jayden Daniels and a potential transfer location. We also got to talk to you about the words of endorsement that Herm Edwards has been given by two very important people on the Arizona State University staff. And then we close it out talking a little bit about basketball and a preview for the Pac-12 tournament coming up here on the 9th. You were listening to the Locked on Sun Devils podcast.
You are Locked on Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked on Sun Devils podcast. My name is Richie Bradshaw. Joined always is my good friend and co-guide Conner Drios. Welcome to the Locked on Sun Devils podcast, the best spot for your daily Arizona State Sun Devils news. Remember that this podcast is free and available on all platforms, which includes but is not limited to Spotify, Odyssey, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts in an audio form. Me and Conner are there. We're also available on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. Go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. Let us know. Follow us on Twitter as well. Myself at RichieBrads36, Conner at CDrios, and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Conner, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into this.
Wasting time. We were setting up the show. We got to set up the show, man. That wasn't a waste of time. Everyone wants to listen to that first minute, 45 seconds.
I don't want to listen.
Anyways, where's Jayden Daniels headed?
That's the question mark. So on Thursday afternoon, there was a report that came out that Jayden Daniels was signing with the Missouri Tigers over in the SEC. And we had speculated that maybe Jayden wanted to hop over to the SEC, and Mizzou on the surface seemed like the team that was going to land Daniels' talents. However, if there's one source you can trust, it's directly from the guy. And Jayden Daniels came out and said, I have not signed anywhere, just so you know. While he didn't exactly dismiss going to Mizzou, he did come out and say that as of right now, he is not signed, he is not committed, he is not transferring anywhere, including the University of Missouri. Conner, what are our initial thoughts on not only this whole situation, but the potential idea that Jayden is going to find his way over to the SEC?
Yeah, first things first, I want to understand where the lack of connection is in terms of their communication. How can the school think, oh, he's coming here? I saw multiple tweets saying like their head coach, like they got their guy. And Jayden saying, no, they didn't. Well, I still think this is a strong candidate to land Jayden Daniels. It's just a little odd to me. The situation's a little odd as a whole. That being said, he's going to the SEC. I think it's a possibility. I've already talked about this once the Jayden Daniels news broke. I'm very curious if this is more of a I want to do what I can for my career to go to the NFL kind of move, or if this is what I can do for essentially the biggest NIL move for my career, right? What can I do to line my pockets right now?
Right.
I don't know how I feel about a move. If it's for an NIL deal, how I feel about him going to Mizzou, like it's this huge step up from Arizona State. Like at the end of the day, it's in the SEC, better than the Pac-12, right? Like you and I love Arizona State. We love their sports. At the end of the day, the Pac-12 does not get a ton of respect for some of the right and some of the wrong reasons. SEC is definitely king, so good for Jayden if that's where he does decide to go. It's just, again, like when we were talking, I think it was maybe earlier this week, it was kind of if he goes to, in what my opinion feels like a lateral move, I'm going to be a little kind of off put by it. So if he does end up going to Mizzou, I saw the news and was kind of like, okay, good for you. If you feel like that's better, I guess that's better. But when I first saw Mizzou, I guess that wasn't the school I was expecting, in my opinion.
No, not at all. And I mean, Mizzou doesn't have too much going for them. They were 6-7 this past year, so bowl eligible, but ultimately didn't win their bowl game. And you look at what's on their roster, and Conner, there's not much. They had Tyler Batty last year, rushed for 1,600 yards. Tyler Batty is going to the NFL. The next leading rusher on the team was Elijah Young, who only had 37 carries and had less than 200 yards. Receiving, They don't have much either. Let me see. Shirtowski.
Take your time. Take your time.
Or Kritowski. I think.
Sound it out. Clap the syllables if you need.
Kritowski Dove had 576 receiving yards and 0 touchdowns as the leader for the team. So there is not much that Jayden is going to have over at Mizzou compared to what he had at Arizona State. And again, Mizzou is SEC, sure, but Vanderbilt is also SEC. So take it with a grain of salt. You got the label, but you're not necessarily like a team that actually lives up to the label of Southeastern Conference. And
his games will get played earlier in the day.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a benefit.
They're not going to be anywhere special, though. Like, you might be able to sneak a couple CBS primetime games, but, I mean, it's not like these games get nationally broadcast. Mizzou is not what we would call a powerhouse, not even a powerhouse, like just a branded school, right?
Hey, they have Drew Lock.
They did have Drew Lock. That's it.
That's it.
They put a few guys out here and there, but I mean, it's not like this is a school that is putting out NFL talent every single year, and we're gonna see that again. Tyler Batty's gone, and there was not much else after Batty. So,
and we're not comparing them to ASU like we have this embarrassment of riches, right? Like this is a problem for ASU as well. They're going to kind of have to run the ball by force because they really don't have a whole lot to throw to in the passing game. And again, we don't even know what the run game is going to look like. So it's not like we're saying if he stayed here, his offensive weapons are 10 times better. We don't know that. But at the same time, again, it's not like he's going to a bona fide situation where it is he's got his X receiver here. He's got a good slot or tight end guy, a stud running back to be able to rely on. They have a lot of questions too. So if that's the route he does go, again, very much a lateral move, in my opinion, even with all the stuff going on with Arizona State. But as we had already talked about in the beginning part of this podcast, he says he has not committed anywhere. So, again, very weird that the communication going on between the school and Jayden Daniels. So, not the first school I think that we'll hear from this so far, but I'm very curious if he does end up elsewhere, if Mizzou ever comes out to comment saying, like, hey, here's where we misunderstood. Like, we thought he was coming here for sure. To me, that's a yes or no question. Are you coming to ASU? Yes or no? So I'm not quite sure where that's getting misconstrued so far, but yeah, certainly not the only school still available to Jayden Daniels as of right now.
No, and for what it's worth, the source that tweeted it out was Mizzou Fan Club on Twitter, which has less than 1,500 followers. Take it with a grain of salt. They actually doubled down after Daniels had tweeted out and said, I'm not committed anywhere as of right now. Thank you. They doubled down and said, Daniels has signed with Mizzou, but it does not mean he's locked in. He is still able to play anywhere he can. I have not seen any other sources confirm this, though. So, I mean, Am I saying they're wrong? No, I'm not saying they're wrong. It definitely could be true, but until I see an ESPN report or a NCAA transfer portal official Twitter account report, I don't know how much stock we can put into this. However, I could totally that definitely. No, you're good. That definitely seems like some kind of option for Daniels to end up in. Because again, like you said, his games are going to be broadcast earlier. For what it's worth, he's going to the SEC, and he's going to be the guy. Like, the whole offense is going to be based around Daniels. It's not like at Arizona State where he had a Rashad White to bank off of. It's going to be the Jayden Daniels show, and he's going to have to elevate everybody, Connor. Like, it's going to be up to him to carry this Mizzou team that's very mediocre, if we're being honest. And they have been. Like, it's not like a few years ago they were a great team. They've had some good defenses over the years. They've had the Charles Harrises and the Michael Sams and some other guys on defense. They had Jeremy Maclin like 13, 14 years ago. Yes. They have put out some players.
Cardinals legend, Jeremy Maclin.
Was he really a Cardinal?
I think he might have been a practice squad guy. I might be misremembering that, but I think he might have been.
I remember.
I think I'm confusing with Michael Crabtree. Michael Crabtree was here for a cup of coffee.
Yes.
But regardless, this might be my own ignorance here. I'm not sure what the difference is between signing with the school versus not committing to them. Right? Like, what is? Did you get his autograph, and that's what you meant by he signed with Mizzou? Because seriously, like, if he is signed / committed. How does that not mean he's not playing for you? Like, what percentage of his rights? Like, he's not a stock that you can just buy a part of. Like, we don't own Jayden Daniels because we have 49% of his stock. We don't have all of his rights. So if someone else signs 51% of him, like, he can still go to that school. So I'm very confused on what that Twitter report means. And again, this could be my ignorance. So if there's some sort of stipulation here where he's halfway in with Mizzou but can still go somewhere, I don't know. But it's a very, for them to double down again on it, saying, well, he has signed with us. It just, again, confusing more to me. I don't think at this point it means anything. I don't think he is any closer to Mizzou than maybe he might be to another school at this point.
Well, not to worry, because the Locked On Sun Devils will have you covered for all that information as it comes out. But until then, we are going to go ahead and hop into our first break. When we return, we got to talk about some praise that has come out for Herm Edwards from two very important people associated with the Arizona State University. But first, we need to talk to you about a couple of our friends.
First friend's going to be Run Your Pool, guys. March Madness is just under 3 weeks away, and that means you need to start thinking now about where you're going to be running your brackets this year. Are you going for the usual, or are you looking for the best? We've done our homework here, and we're running our brackets with runyourpool.com. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pick X. They have options to edit your scoring, and they offer more intel to make your picks, all stuff you don't find at ESPN or CBS. If you've got a business, Run Your Pool can help you take some of that March Madness magic and play alongside your employees and even gain customers. Plus, they'll offer full white glove customer support, custom branding, and one of the easiest 3-minute setups you'll ever find. Clearly, we believe Run Your Pool because, like I said, we're running our brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test to that. If you want to play against us for a shot at a cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. And while you're there, create your own pool for your friends and family. Enter Pure Madness, all one word, at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. We're looking forward to seeing you there and beating you there.
This year, I'm not giving up on my New Year's resolution the way that I would have before. I'm sticking to it because not only am I eating healthy, but I feel confident about it thanks to Built Bar. If you haven't had the Puffs yet, let me tell you, you're missing out because it's one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all so good. They're going to be your new favorite flavor. All Built Bars, again, are covered in 100% real chocolate, including the Puffs. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They're better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. If you go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, you'll be absolutely blown away. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, compared to a protein or a candy bar, which typically has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. These bars are high in protein, low in calorie, high in fiber, and low in carb, with so many different flavors to choose from. Mint brownie, coconut almond, so many more. Plus, this month, white chocolate cookies and cream is the limited time offer. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If you think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will all be delicious, and it'll all be good for you. So do yourself a favor. Go to BuiltBar.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Connor, we're back. Remember, the Locked On Sun Devils podcast is free and available on all platforms. Let's go ahead and dive into a new conversation now. Herm Edwards getting the endorsement not only from athletic director Ray Anderson, but also, more importantly, getting the stamp of approval from Arizona State University President Michael Crow. Connor, these are very high praises that are coming down for Herm Edwards from two very, very, very important figures in the university.
But why?
So
why?
It came out today in an interview with Bickley and Murata that on Arizona Sports 98.7 FM local radio. This was said when they were talking to Michael Crow about Herm Edwards. Give me one sec while I pull the quote. Here we go. Coach Edwards has done an outstanding job of upgrading our program. We've got this collision of people who have decided not to play by the rules related to recruiting. We'll be looking at how to make improvements. Coach Edwards is responsible for the actions of all his people, but these are not the things he asked them to do. These are not the things he was a part of. So what Michael Crow is basically endorsing here is Herm Edwards plays by the rules. What the rest of the coaching staff did was not according to the way he wanted to run things. Now, here's the thing. There is still that stipulation that he's in charge. So in other words, he should have been all over this and taking control of this. It never should have gotten to this point. Totally understandable, right? But for what it's worth, and I can totally buy this because this is just the way that Herm Edwards has always come across as an individual, not just a coach. He is somebody who is a fair man. He plays by the rules, sticks to the rules. He's a good leader and a voice among men. So,
according to Rashad White, he is also a sensei.
There you go. He is a sensei. I do remember that. Yes. He definitely comes across as that guy, which is why when this news broke, it was almost kind of surprising that Arizona State was at the centerfold of all of this. So I buy it to a certain extent, right? I buy it because that's definitely the character that speaks the loudest from Herm Edwards. However, this should never have gotten to the point it got to. And I severely doubt that Herm Edwards was completely blind to this whole situation, the way it is made out to appear.
We have Michael Crow and Ray Anderson all this week kind of talking about how great Herm Edwards has been, which, let's be fair, when he first started, so maybe his first 2 seasons, maybe first 3 seasons, that was the third year was the COVID season, but Herm Edwards, in my opinions, was going beyond my expectations when he first got hired here, in my opinion. This last year, this was the make it or break it year, right? And they did not get any better. Now coming along with everything they've gone through with the recruiting violations, I don't know, man. Like I feel like I've lost all my faith in essentially who's running this program, not even at the football level, but whether it's Michael Crow, Ray Anderson, they're obviously on a united front in terms of a public opinion. Whether they truly believe this in their heart of hearts, we don't know. We can't, unless they come out and say otherwise, we can only take that at face value. That being said, I totally agree with their comments as far as Michael Crow saying that he should be held responsible for everybody beneath him. That's 100% true. But I've seen conflicting reports. I've seen other people out there saying that Herm Edwards did have a hand, saying that he did also meet with people prior, or essentially during the time when they could be recruiting players. Only the NCAA is going to be able to figure this out, right? We can talk about maybe why one is true and one is not, but until the NCAA actually comes out and says, here's what we discovered during our investigation, and here's what we believed happened, until that actually comes out, I don't know who to believe, because again, Ray Anderson and Michael Crow aren't going to come out on the airwaves and essentially say that, yeah, Herm Edwards, he was recruiting players, but we like him better than maybe some of the other coaches, so we just decided to keep him around. They're not going to say that, right? And maybe he didn't have anything to do with it. Again, just because there's a report out there saying that he did recruit during that time, that downtime, also doesn't make it true. Right. So until the truth has been 100% dug up, I think ASU as a whole, all the way from the top, is just doing what they have to do to kind of cover themselves. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, if it comes out that Herm Edwards was involved and they find this out, maybe they for some reason ask some of the players that they believe to be recruiting during this time. I have no idea how they're going to go about doing that. But if it does come out that Herm Edwards was involved at all, and the school has doubled down now publicly saying, yeah, he wasn't involved, maybe he should take some of the blame because he's in charge of all these people, but we still believe he didn't have anything to do with it. If the report comes out that he in fact did, that is going to make you look so dumb. Yep. So dumb. Almost as dumb as Herm Edwards saying that he believes fully in Jayden Daniels at the end of December just for him to walk out a month and a half later. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, took that L on that one, that's for sure. Playing on what you said, Ray Anderson also had this to say, quote, "We just have to be patient as required And so we're going to do that before we make any final determinations of our program, who leads it going into the long-term future. But one thing I can tell you, I certainly personally don't believe that any rush to judgment is justified here in the case at ASU, and I will remain adamant about that. So while he doesn't directly specify any kind of like outgoing support for Herm Edwards, it is very much implied that he is completely in Herm Edwards' corner and doesn't believe in putting down any kind of judgment on anybody that's still associated with Arizona State, including Herm Edwards. And quite frankly, Connor, this is the right thing to do. You need to be backing your guys the entirety of the way, even if you're wrong. This is your coaching staff, and it's a reflection of you too. Like, what would it say about Ray Anderson if he not only threw Herm Edwards under the bus, but allowed these allegations to be going on while everything was happening? And at the end of the day, probably was. And unfortunately, it might cost him his job. But right now, he needs to stay in Herm Edwards' corner because it's not only important for the brand, but it's important for his integrity as well. So don't blame him at all for coming out with this stance. And again, this is 100% believable from the Herm Edwards standpoint. I believe you when you talk about the way that you have described Herm Edwards. Okay? Totally believe it. I just don't buy that he had no idea. That's where I'm dismissing this completely.
Agreed. They can't come out and say that, yeah, he might have had something to do with it, but we're still going to keep him on staff. They can't do that until they have a definitive answer. So I guess good for them by backing it up. But time will tell. Once the judgment comes down, I personally still don't believe Herm Edwards' job is safe. I think if he's involved in this more than what's come out publicly, he's gone. I think if they have a worse season than what they've had, right, because they can't seem to get over that 8-win hump. They keep talking about building this 15 or it's like top 15 program. But if they take another step backwards, like you and I probably think they will at this point, I don't think his job's safe. And again, that includes, in my opinion, all the guys they've brought on in the last year or two.
Right. Nope. Totally agree. So in the meantime, this isn't a surprise to see Michael Crow and Ray Anderson come out and defend their guy. I will tell you, it is huge that Michael Crow came out to defend Herm Edwards. Now, that's a guy you want going to bat for you. So if anyone giving you that kind of not so much stamp of approval.
Oh, not a stamp of approval. Certainly not.
I mean, that could be the way.
Who would say that?
Some jerk who went to GCU probably. But for Michael Crow to want to step up and defend you the way that he has, that tells me a lot about how he feels about Herm Edwards, his character, and the way he represents Arizona State University's football team. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close out this second segment. When we return for the third and final segment, we're going to talk a little bit of basketball and the potential outlook for the Pac-12 tournament that's coming up here on March 9th. But first, another quick word from our friends over at BetOnline.
Guys, so football might be over for the season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From the latest odds, totals, player performances, props to where the next fired head coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And we're back for the third and final segment of the Locked on Sun Devils podcast. Connor, it's time to switch gears, talk a little bit of football now. First things first.
You
we gotta
mean
talk
basketball?
What did I say?
Football.
Like switching gears from
If the court reporter will read back what you said, we are now switching gears to basketball. I'm just here to correct the people so they're not confused.
I'm going to take this chip clip that was sitting on my desk, and I'm going to throw it at my screen.
And then will you tell me who the potential players that or teams that ASU could be playing in the Pac-12 tournament?
Absolutely. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Connor. Tell the good people about the potential outlook right now. This is what we're going to talk about, by the way, is with the Pac-12 tournament around the corner here very, very soon. ASU has 4 games left to play before the end of the regular season. So the road to the Pac-12 tournament is right around the corner. This is very, very important for Arizona State. They want to find a way to get near the top, if not win the whole tournament in order to get themselves into play for the actual NCAA tournament. Connor, who are some of our potential victims heading into this situation?
So to set the stage, the way this is going to work is everyone's going to be seeded, right? Generally, it's just going to be by your record. So in this case, like Arizona right now would be the 1 seed in the Pac-12. No surprises there. Your top 4 seeds are going to get a bye for the first round. So starting on March 9th through March 12th is when the entire tournament's going to take place. But those top 4 teams get a bye. So with the way the current standings are, Arizona, USC, and UCLA are essentially almost locked in to take those byes, right? Now, Oregon and Colorado are about 2.5 games left, depending on their overall win-loss records. But there's only about 4 games left, right? So there's not very much time for some of these teams to be able to make it up. That would also include teams like USC or UCLA losing multiple games, which they haven't necessarily had much of a losing streak at all this year. So Oregon and Colorado are going to be fighting for that 4th seed and starting with that bye. But from there, your teams will be seeded at 5, 6, all the way through 12. And so where that puts Arizona State currently, as they stand 6 and 10 within the conference, they're currently the 9th seed, meaning that they would play the 8th seed in the very first round of the tournament. If things ended right now and they're going to play who essentially the 8th seed is in front of them, that would be the Stanford Cardinal, Richie, who they already played earlier this year when they lost 79-76. Very close game. Not a lot of defense in that game, with ASU especially putting up 76 points. They dropped 44 in the second half alone. So it's not something we've seen them cross that 40-point threshold many halves this season. So Stanford could be one of the options. That being said, Washington State and Washington are both at 8-8 respectively, with Stanford being at 8-9. So now, with essentially all those teams only being about a half game off, there's a situation where all those teams can kind of flip. My apologies. My dog seems to have a bit of opinion on the Pac-12 tournament.
I don't blame him, but it's probably a bad opinion.
It's totally agreed. So that being said, those are essentially the main players you're going to be looking at, right? Because Utah's already 2 games behind you, and especially if you beat them in one of your 4 remaining games, Utah's not going to be passing you. Same thing with like a Cal. So that being said, your only 3 opponents that you could potentially be facing are Washington State, and Stanford. So not exactly a matchup that feels unwinnable, especially with how unpredictable this Arizona State team feels like they've been this season.
100%, man. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all comes down. So Oregon State is definitively the last team here, and there's absolutely no way that Arizona State could fall below them. The worst Arizona State could finish here is 11th in the standings. They do have Utah and Cal right on their tail. They're 2 games back, though. Arizona State sitting at 6 and 10, with Utah and Cal both sitting at 4 and 13 on the year. So there is a chance that ASU could find a way to move up in the standings, though. It's not completely impossible, Connor, for them to find themselves all the way up to being the 6th seed. If they win out, and the teams ahead of them, being both the Washington schools and Stanford, find a way to lose at least 2 of their last games, right? No.
Yeah, 2 of the last like 4-ish. Some of them might even be 3 or 5. I haven't looked at their schedules, but
they would need to lose at least 2 of their, or 3, because right now they have tiebreakers over Arizona State. So they would need to go 1 and 3 in their final games, which isn't impossible. It's just very unlikely. So I would be willing to bet that Arizona State stays firm and pat with the 9th seed, which would ultimately put them against one of Washington State, and Stanford. But like you said, as of right now, we are playing Stanford. I don't hate our odds in that game, but we'll see. I mean, it truly depends, Connor, which Arizona State basketball team is going to show up. Is it going to be the one that's complete, finds a way to put up a good amount of points and does good enough defense? Or is it going to be the one that is a 1/2 wonder and then finds a way to crap the bed So we'll see. It's just it's the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing right now. We just don't know which Arizona State basketball team we're going to be getting. And it's very frustrating. But as a famous Richie Bradshaw would say, it is what it is.
Agreed there. Now, based off of what they've already done this season, they did beat Washington 58-55. They played Stanford essentially pretty close, right? And they do get one more game coming up against them at the very end of the season. But essentially, Washington is they only have played once this year. That game wasn't necessarily close. They lost 87-64. So based off of current matchups, maybe that's the team you potentially want to avoid. And at the end of the day, like if you want to make a tournament through the Pac-12, you're gonna have to face some pretty tough basketball schools. So what's a Washington compared to an Arizona or a UCLA, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, like if they get Washington, that's certainly not a death sentence, but it seems like they can play some of these games a little bit better with a Washington State or maybe a Stanford. And who knows, like if they do end up with Stanford again in the Pac-12 tournament after they play them the last game of the year, if they end up winning that game, maybe that gives them a little bit of confidence saying, hey, we just beat this team. We played them close earlier in this year. This is definitely a winnable game for us. Not that it's a guarantee by any stretch, but this is not a guaranteed loss by any way or by any means.
Your dogs definitely have some very strong opinions about that. So let's go ahead and put a close to this Friday edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in every single day. Remember that the podcast is free and available on all platforms, which includes but is not limited to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts on an audio platform. Me and Connor are there and available for you guys. We're also on YouTube as well in a video format. If you would like to see our beautiful faces, go ahead, subscribe to the podcast, like, comment, 5-star rating, ratio, add us on Twitter, all that fun stuff. Speaking of Twitter, go ahead and follow me at RichieBrads36, Connor at CDrios, and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Sun Devils your first listen every day. Go ahead and make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. Just like the Locked On Sun Devils, it is free and available on all platforms. And until next time, Sun Devil fans, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.